Welcome back to the land of ancient Egypt, where mighty pharaohs ruled a civilization that lasted for thousands of years. How did they rise to power? How did they build an empire that shaped the ancient world? And what secrets lie buried in their tombs? Today on MythicMarvel, we'll journey deeper than ever into the world of the pharaohs. From divine propaganda to military genius and even some downright shocking scandals, this is the ultimate guide to how the Egyptian pharaohs ruled an empire. Before there were pharaohs, Egypt was a land of small, independent communities. These early tribes were led by chieftains who fought over fertile land along the Nile. But around 3100 BCE, one man changed everything. Narmer, also known as Menes. Narmer didn't just unify Upper and Lower Egypt, he created a new concept of kingship. He claimed to be chosen by the gods, making his rule sacred and unquestionable. It wasn't just politics, it was divine destiny. This idea of the God King became the foundation of pharaoh power. Imagine combining the roles of president, pope, and military general. That was the pharaoh. Let's talk about what made pharaohs so unique: their divine status. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs weren't just rulers, they were living gods. This wasn't just a clever marketing strategy. It was deeply embedded in Egyptian culture. Pharaohs were seen as the earthly embodiment of Horus, the falcon-headed god of kingship. When they died, they became Osiris, the god of the afterlife. This divine connection wasn't just symbolic, it was used to justify their absolute power. Take Akhenaten, for example. He didn't just claim to be a god, he tried to overhaul the entire religious system by introducing a new deity, Aten, the sun disk. He built an entirely new city, Amarna, dedicated to this god. But spoiler alert, it didn't end well. The pharaohs didn't maintain their divine status alone. They had an army of priests who acted as their PR team. Temples weren't just places of worship, they were propaganda machines. Priests spread the message that the pharaoh was chosen by the gods and that obeying him was a sacred duty. Temples also collected taxes in the form of grain, gold, and livestock, making them centers of wealth and power. But here's where it gets tricky. By the time of the New Kingdom, priests, especially those of Ammonius, had amassed so much power that they rivaled the pharaohs themselves. This led to some serious political drama, but more on that later. Pharaohs weren't just divine, they were also military masterminds. Egypt's wealth and power depended on securing its borders and expanding its influence. One of the most famous military campaigns was led by Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt. Under his reign, Egypt became a superpower, dominating regions as far as modern-day Syria and Sudan. But military victories weren't just about land, they were about prestige. The spoils of war brought gold, slaves, and exotic goods into Egypt, further solidifying the pharaoh's divine image. And don't forget Ramses II, who turned the Battle of Kadesh into one of history's first propaganda campaigns. While the pharaohs lived in luxury, the average Egyptian had a very different life. Most people were farmers, waking up before sunrise to tend their fields. They paid taxes in the form of grain, which supported the state and its massive building projects. Artisans and laborers also played a crucial role. The pyramids, for example, weren't built by slaves but by skilled workers who were fed and housed by the state. Fun fact, they were even paid in beer, a staple of the Egyptian diet. But life wasn't all work. Egyptians celebrated festivals honoring the gods, and many participated in grand temple ceremonies. For all their divine status, pharaohs were still human, and that meant drama. Royal courts were hotbeds of intrigue, betrayal, and even murder. One of the biggest scandals involved Ramses III, who was assassinated in a palace conspiracy led by one of his wives. She wanted her son to take the throne, and things got messy. Ancient documents detail a trial where dozens of conspirators were executed. Then there's the story of Akhenaten, whose religious reforms alienated much of the priesthood and nobility. After his death, his successors tried to erase his legacy entirely. Let's not forget the pyramids, arguably the most iconic symbols of pharaoh power. How were they built? Theories range from simple ramps to more complex pulley systems. Recent discoveries suggest workers used sleds and poured water on the sand to reduce friction. A genius hack, But the pyramids weren't just tombs. They were statements of power. Khufu's Great Pyramid, for example, took over 2 million stone blocks and nearly 20 years to complete. Each block weighed as much as 2 elephants. The mighty pharaohs seemed unstoppable. For thousands of years, they ruled the richest and most powerful civilization on Earth. But no empire lasts forever. So what caused Egypt's decline? Let's break it down into 3 major factors: internal corruption, external threats, and environmental disasters. Let's start with internal corruption. By the end of the New Kingdom, Egypt was plagued by power struggles. The once mighty pharaohs were no longer the all-powerful god-kings of the Old Kingdom. Instead, they had to constantly fight for control, not just from enemies outside Egypt, but from within their own royal court. Priests, especially those of Ammonius, had grown incredibly powerful. They controlled vast amounts of land and wealth, rivaling the pharaohs themselves. Imagine trying to run a country while your religious leaders are basically running a parallel government. Not easy, right? Even Ramses XI, the last pharaoh of the New Kingdom, struggled to keep the priests of Ammonius in check. This division weakened the central government, making Egypt vulnerable to invasion and rebellion. Now let's talk about external threats. Egypt was surrounded by powerful enemies, and by the time of the New Kingdom's decline, these enemies were closing in. First, there were the infamous Sea Peoples. Around 1200 BCE, these mysterious invaders wreaked havoc across the Mediterranean, toppling empires and even threatening Egypt itself. Pharaoh Ramses III managed to push them back, but the war drained Egypt's resources and left its economy in shambles. Then came the Nubians from the south, the Libyans from the west, and the Assyrians from the east. These invasions weren't just military defeats. They chipped away at Egypt's wealth and stability. And let's not forget the Persians. In 525 BCE, under King Cambyses II, the Persians conquered Egypt, marking the first time the land of the pharaohs was ruled by a foreign power. But the pharaohs didn't just lose to armies, they also lost to nature. The Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt, became unreliable. Periods of low flooding led to famine, economic collapse, and widespread unrest. Remember, the pharaohs had always claimed their divine connection ensured the Nile's fertility. So when the river stopped cooperating, people started doubting their rulers. A pharaoh who couldn't control the floods was no pharaoh at all in the eyes of the people. And it wasn't just the Nile. Climate change around the Mediterranean caused droughts, food shortages, and mass migrations. This domino effect disrupted trade and made Egypt's problems even worse. By the time of Cleopatra VII, Egypt was a shadow of its former glory. The Ptolemaic dynasty, founded by one of Alexander the Great's generals, ruled Egypt, but it was heavily influenced by Roman politics. Cleopatra, known for her intelligence and political maneuvering, tried to keep Egypt independent by forming alliances with powerful Romans like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. But after her defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, she took her own life, and Egypt fell under Roman control. With Cleopatra's death, the age of the pharaohs officially came to an end. Egypt became just another province of the Roman Empire. So what caused the fall of the pharaohs? It wasn't just one thing, it was a perfect storm. Corruption at home, relentless invasions from abroad, and environmental disasters combined to bring down one of history's greatest empires. But even in their decline, the pharaohs left behind an incredible legacy. Their monuments still stand, their stories still captivate, and their influence can be felt even today. And that's how the mighty pharaohs fell. Want to know more about other ancient empires and their secrets? Hit that like button, subscribe to MythicMarvel, and let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious.